Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I hope you're all doing super well. Welcome if you're new here. My name's Sarah. I make videos every single week here on YouTube talking about my journey with acne, my journey with my hormonal health, gut health, female health in general really. So in today's video, I wanted to share my experience going gluten-free since last September with my skin and my gut health, because I know it's really easy to go online and see that giving up gluten could be the cure-all for all kinds of health conditions. So yeah, I thought maybe if you're also researching this and thinking about giving it a go, I thought I would share my experience in case it might help in some way. I really believe that all parts of our body are connected. So if we're trying to clear our skin or heal our gut health or our hormonal health, we really have to think holistically about it. So if I'm being honest, when I decided to cut out gluten last September, it was mainly for my gut health problems. I've had really severe bloating, chronic acid reflux, and the tests came back to say that I had small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. Wow, that is a mouthful. And also obviously the chronic acid reflux, there was definitely signs of that as well. So I met with a dietitian and she very quickly put me on the low FODMAP diet, which some of you may have heard of, some of you may not have heard of. Essentially it's cutting out very specific types of carbohydrates that could potentially ferment in your gut and cause all kinds of problems. Now, one of these fermentable carbohydrates are found in gluten. So that is definitely something that is advised to cut out to see if it can help in some way. So since last September, I would say I've probably been about 90% gluten-free, with the exception of things like Christmas, birthdays, like occasions. And in all honesty, if like a family member has baked or even if I've baked, I'm gonna eat it. I think sometimes the stress of trying to avoid something with gluten is probably way more harmful on our nervous system, on our gut health, skin, everything, than actually just eating the gluten. So like I said, the reason I gave up gluten in the first place was for my gut health, but actually seeing the effect it's had on my skin is really where it's been quite exciting. So at the same time I started this diet, I also created my Skinstory journal. I've been tracking my skin in a journal for probably about a year at this point. But within my Skinstory journal that I created is also a food tracker. So basically you can write down what you eat each day, keep track of any kind of ingredients and things that you think might be triggers for your skin and yeah, I guess your gut health as well. So like so. So it's actually been super valuable seeing how this gluten experience or giving up gluten experience has been for my skin and actually seeing it in evidence in my Skinstory journal. I created this journal off the back of my experience dealing with acne, especially as an adult. And there are multiple trackers in here that I use each day so that I can actually see patterns between my skin and other factors in my life. And honestly, it has been an amazing experience actually finally finding out what my acne triggers are, because it was so frustrating breaking out and never really understanding why. I never really could kind of put together a plan, and I honestly believed it was never just one thing, and that has totally been proven to me whilst tracking. It isn't just one skincare product or one kind of diet, it's a holistic approach. So I've been having a deep dive look through my journal and my last year's one to see how this gluten experience has really affected my skin, and I wanted to share that with you just in case you're also thinking about giving up gluten for health reasons, whether that be your skin or your gut health, like I said. And I personally always find it really helpful if someone else has already been through the same experience. Also, just while we're on the topic of the journal, I really just want to say that this has completely changed my life. Actually journaling and finding my acne triggers has been transformative, and I would love the same for you. So even if you don't go and purchase my Skinstory journal that I created, I cannot recommend creating your own from home, like just in a notebook. That's how I started tracking my skin. If you do want to purchase this, then I will leave the link in the description box below so you can go and check that out. But yeah, you really do start to get a really good understanding of your skin and your health in general when you start to see that there are patterns, and it allows you to create your lifestyle around, you know, keeping healthy and happy and being comfortable in your own skin without being really restrictive, because for such a long time I was ruling things out of my diet, like dairy for example, which I really didn't need to. I just assumed that might help my acne. Same with changing my pillowcases every other day. All of these things didn't actually contribute to my acne personally, and I needed to see it like in data, tracking, to really believe whether it was true or not. I've also got some tips at the end, because to be honest, I love bread and I found giving up gluten probably one of the hardest things to rule out of my diet. So yeah, stay tuned to the end and I'll share those with you. So back to the gluten experience. When I first actually ruled out gluten, I didn't see any dramatic change. And I think the reason for this was probably because I was going about just supplementing what would have been like breads and pastas with really obvious gluten-free options that were just in the supermarket. And I wasn't really paying attention to the ingredients. I found lots of the gluten-free products to be fine, like they tasted good. But when I actually did have a look, they were mostly made out of corn and grains. So to be honest, the amount of grains I was eating probably actually increased. Maybe because every time I was out and I saw a gluten-free option, I was actually quite excited to try it. So I ended up eating way more grains than probably I would ever usually. I was also still eating oats for breakfast, which I absolutely love. They're my favorite breakfast. I love overnight oats and porridge. They're also super healthy, so definitely don't feel like you can't eat oats for breakfast. I do it on occasion still, but I did find that that was actually just contributing to the amount of grains I was eating a day and really just slowing down my digestion. So I decided to make a real good attempt to remove the majority of the grains in my diet and actually swap that out with starchy vegetables. And I really thought I was going to miss things like lasagna, pasta bake, because they're my absolute favourites. But I just started to swap them out for things that were kind of similar, kind of different, but still gave me that kind of satisfying, like full feeling when I eat something that's, you know, pasta based. So I had things like moussaka, I've been making shepherd's pie, and all of these things are definitely more kind of root vegetable based, like potato, aubergine, but instead you're not having a ton of gluten or a ton of grains. And I found that a really good substitute. I also swapped out my regular oats for breakfast and actually made more kind of eggs, omelettes, and I just started to be a bit more creative with what I was eating in the morning. This was really spurred on by being able to work from home, which obviously has been happening over the last few months. So this has allowed me more time in the kitchen in the morning rather than commuting to make a different kind of breakfast. Sorry, I just got a message about a dance class that I'm meant to be doing tonight with a group of friends and it's completely distracted me. So what was I saying? Yes, grains. I replaced a lot of my grains with starchy vegetables. However, I will say that I did also include white rice and I still eat a little bit of white rice. Probably not as much as I used to, but definitely when I feel like I want some form of grains or carbohydrate that isn't vegetables, that tends to be what I eat. Also rice noodles, I find that they're also a lot easier to digest than whole grains. So once I made these switches, I really started to notice a difference. And like I said, on my gut health, I felt like I was definitely digesting things a lot better, but on my skin is where I really noticed the biggest change, which was definitely where I got the most excited. So it was about a few weeks after making these changes that I really noticed the biggest difference on my skin, and I was really checking in my journal to make sure that this was correct. But honestly, after these changes, I don't think I got a breakout, like any kind of spot, for about 2 months, and that is so unheard of for me. So of course I was really excited about this, and I continued with this new way of eating. I was definitely noticing, like I said, that, you know, my digestion didn't feel quite as slow, I didn't feel quite as bloated, and yeah, I was kind of getting creative in the kitchen and making lots of new recipes. My digestion is far from perfect still, but just seeing how calm my skin was definitely was enough to encourage me to carry on. Then I decided to make a little bit of a rogue decision, and I actually introduced a few of the grains back in, and I also introduced gluten back in a very small amount. And the reason I did this is, as I said, I love bread, but I've been at home quite a lot, as we all have, and I've been baking a lot more than I would usually, so I kind of wanted to eat the things that I was baking. I'm also really excited to be making sourdough bread, which again, I feel like lots of us are attempting in lockdown. But more importantly, I wanted to give this a full test, because sometimes there can just be coincidences, and I wanted to see in my journal if I could actually, you know, see a link between breaking out or having really intense bloating and gluten. And the verdict, it has not been good for my skin. So I definitely have been breaking out a lot more since I started to reintroduce just a little bit of gluten. Not every day, I've just been having maybe something once a week, maybe not even. I guess it's really just, like I said, if I've been baking at home and I want to try out what I've been making, I will do that. I've also noticed on my gut health, whenever I eat gluten, it is very painful to digest, and it also takes a long time. So yeah, it just doesn't feel like a payoff that's worth it. Don't get me wrong, like I said, I think there's going to be occasions where I feel like I do want to eat it, but for the most part, I don't think my body is ready for that yet. I feel like I'm still definitely healing from things like SIBO, like I said, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, and my chronic acid reflux. I just don't think that, you know, my health is ready to basically be moving on to that point yet. That being said, I do believe that some health conditions, some kind of digestive issues, when removing gluten, I feel like you can reintroduce it eventually, and that should be the aim. Obviously, if you're like celiac or you have a real kind of severe allergy, then obviously don't do that. But for me, I do feel like, hopefully, I'm really hoping that I'll be able to get to a stage where I can eat it again. So as promised, I've got a few tips that will hopefully help you if you're thinking about experimenting by removing gluten from your diet. First thing I'm going to mention is sourdough. So I actually did an online course with a naturopathic nutritionist who shared this bit of information, which I was so excited about. And that is sourdough, as I said. If you're planning on making this at home, the sourdough starter that you use is basically like creating your own yeast, and you're able to digest this so much better than usual kind of baker's yeast or whatever it is that commercially people use in bread making. So this is definitely something that I'm going to be trying. As I said, I've got my starter ready. I'm going to be baking tomorrow, I hope. And yeah, that I would say is something to look into, because maybe you'll be able to tolerate that and actually digest it a lot better than usual bread. My second tip is that it can be kind of depressing when you have to remove things from your diet which you really love. i.e. bread, pasta. So for me, it's been really important to actually introduce foods that are kind of new to me, or at least not part of my regular diet, that I really, really like, and I feel like I've gained something. So for me, that has been chia puddings. I love chia puddings. I also melt chocolate in there as well, and they are delicious. If you want the recipe, leave me a comment and I'll definitely include that in my next food video. It kind of gives the same sort of texture as like porridge, which I definitely really miss. I don't eat it as much as I used to. And whilst not having the same impact that grains can have on your digestive system. So yeah, definitely worth a go. And yeah, you can add fruits and all kinds of things, like the toppings kind of make it really, so it can taste as you want it to. I've also been including more root vegetables, so things like beetroot, parsnip, butternut squash, all things that I've eaten before but weren't really part of my regular diet. And introducing those has honestly been a big game changer. I feel like I'm eating a far bigger variety of foods. I feel like I can digest them a lot better. Yeah, I've just really, really enjoyed making new recipes with them, to be honest. Oh, also, and homemade meatballs. I love making homemade meatballs. I've got a really good recipe for that as well, actually. So yeah, just being more experimental and adding more of these kind of variety of things to my diet has, yeah, made me feel like I've gained something rather than losing out on bread and pasta. I would also say just be super careful when you are looking at gluten-free options. Sometimes they are packed full of other things that could just be equally as damaging to your health if you are suffering with gut health issues and finding wheat hard to digest, gluten hard to digest. So yeah, just make sure you're looking at the back of the packets. For me, corn is definitely something that caused just the same problems as gluten did, and that is in a lot of gluten-free products. There are, however, some gluten-free options for bread that I do really like. I actually made cloud breads this week, which had 0 grains. Definitely not bread, but certainly something you can use to kind of substitute bread in for like a sandwich. So yeah, I would look into things like cloud bread and other things that are more kind of grain-free in hopes that it will help your digestion as well. So now that you've heard a little bit about what I'm eating instead and how it's really kind of impacted on my skin, it's honestly been kind of life-changing doing this. It's really, really worked out for my skin. So if you now want a bit more of a deep dive into what I eat in a day, then I did create a what I eat in a day video, which I released a couple of weeks ago. So I'll link that on screen now. Definitely worth a watch to get some inspiration for gluten-free, yummy recipes. So yeah, click the box and I will see you over there. Thanks, guys.